In 2009, 2,914 people escaped from North Korea, but by 2022, that figure had plummeted to just 67, and today North Korea has finally made it impossible to escape, unless you use the last remaining method. Take a look at this graph. You can see thousands of North Koreans would escape to South Korea every year, but in 2011, everything changed. The country's former leader Kim Jong-il passed away, and his son Kim Jong-un came to power. Kim Jong-un made it a #1 priority to crack down on escapes, using extreme methods never seen before. Signal jammers have been installed all across the northern border, blocking all foreign cell and satellite signals, preventing both escapes into China and smuggling of contraband from across the Chinese border. Phone call monitoring stations have also been set up, preventing Chinese people smugglers from helping people escape. The number of watchtowers has also increased. These watchtowers have soldiers armed with machine guns inside, who are ordered to shoot on sight anyone trying to escape. Surveillance cameras and sensors have also been added. Concrete barriers and spiked fences also prevent people escaping. Motion detecting floodlights have also been installed, preventing people escaping in the dark of night. Most of the border now has electric fences and, controversially, landmines, which breaks international law. Fake defectors also hang around near the border. These guys are North Korean agents posing as escapees. Some lure people escaping into fake safe houses before handing them back to North Korean authorities. North Korea has also made deals with neighboring countries, ensuring any escapees are sent back, such as their deal with Russia signed in 2014, which meant Russia would begin deporting any North Koreans they caught in the country. North Korea signed a similar deal with China not long after. All of these new techniques have already cost North Korean lives. In 2023 alone, 6 people lost their lives to mines. Others have been shot while trying to cross, while others have passed away in the harsh mountains bordering North Korea and China. One North Korean man named Zhu made it over to China, but he was soon arrested by Chinese police. To avoid deportation back to North Korea, he escaped the Chinese prison he was being held in, only to be found and arrested yet again. Zhu was later sent back to North Korea, where it's believed he was executed. His entire family was sent to prison too. North Korea has a system named Jeonjwa-jae, meaning family punishment. If one person escapes, their entire family are punished, leading to babies and elderly people being sentenced to prison camps. This discourages people escaping, as even if they're willing to risk their own lives, they may not want to risk the lives of their family. North Korea now also have guards for their border guards. People wanting to escape used to bribe the guards. As North Korea is a poor country, this was a good way for the guards to make money. But North Korea now have people from different departments watching over the guards. Guards are also rewarded for telling on each other. This means none of the guards trust each other, resulting in them being too scared to accept bribes. North Korea has also banned nighttime train and car traffic near the border, and are now even using drones above the border. But despite all of these challenges, North Koreans are still trying to escape. A single escape can take months or years to plan. People walk around near the border, pretending to gather medicinal plants, but secretly they memorize the locations of mines. All of this may sound bad, but in 2020 things got even worse. COVID-19 broke out in China, which seriously worried the North Korean authorities. The country has almost no medical technology, and 42% of people are malnourished, making their immune systems very weak. So the North Korean regime exploited the crisis, locking down the country even more. They constructed hundreds of kilometers of wall, comprised of concrete and barbed wire. These new fortifications sealed off routes defectors had used for decades, making it basically impossible to cross on the northern border. Since 2020, North Koreans also can't move around their own country. North Korea is divided into 9 provinces, and citizens aren't allowed to leave their own province to go to a new one, unless they have the correct authorization and paperwork. If you travel to another province without paperwork, you will be sent to prison, along with your entire family. This has made escaping over the northern border even more hard, especially for those in the southern provinces. You may wonder, why don't they simply cross south into South Korea? Believe it or not, crossing south is even more difficult. North and South Korea is separated by the DMZ, which means Demilitarized Zone. But despite the name, it's one of the most militarized places in the world, with North and South Korean troops guarding their respective borders. It's 250 kilometers in length and 4 kilometers wide. Over the years, many soldiers and civilians have passed away in the DMZ, often North Koreans trying to escape. There are dozens of watchtowers, fences, mines, and even snipers lining the border. But But there is a silver lining. North and South Korea used to be one country, but split in 1945 during the Korean War. Because of this, South Korea counts all North Koreans as their own citizens, meaning any who manage to cross the border into South Korea can enjoy safe refuge, as well as support from the South Korean government. All of this makes South Korea very attractive to North Koreans, but thanks to the DMZ, it's nearly impossible to get to. North Korea have 750,000 troops stationed around the DMZ, and all of them are told to shoot on sight anyone trying to cross. There are also over 2 million mines leading up to the DMZ, making crossing almost impossible, which is why despite all the risks, leaving via China and Russia remains the best bet, and the route most North Korean escapees use. But even if North Koreans do escape to Russia or China, their work is not done. Russia and China are both allies of North Korea, meaning any escapees will have to get to a nearby safe country, one that will deport them to South Korea instead of North Korea, meaning any escapees will have to get to a nearby safe country. Safe countries include Mongolia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia, all countries which refuse to deport North Koreans back to North Korea, and instead send them to South Korea, which is where the North Korean defectors want to go in the first place. But actually getting from Russia or China to one of these safe countries is not easy. They normally have to travel across China, the most effective surveillance state in the world. China has 700 million surveillance cameras, many of which use facial recognition, making it nearly impossible for any North Korean escapee to travel through China without being caught by police. China has also ramped up surveillance on its side of the border with North Korea, adding more surveillance cameras, sensors, and guards, making it much more difficult for the Chinese smugglers who sometimes help North Koreans escape. Back in 2007, these smugglers would charge around $2,000 to help people escape, but today the price has ballooned to around $20,000. The average North Korean earns around $2,000 per year, meaning it would take them years or even decades to save up. Because of this, people now normally don't hire Chinese smugglers, unless they have family who have already escaped, in which case the family can save up on their behalf, and pay the smugglers from another country. Most North Koreans do not have family who have already escaped, meaning they must escape on their own, without help from anyone on the outside. So with the southern border being sealed off by the DMZ, and the northern border being heavily fortified, you may think there's no way left to escape. But given how desperate North Koreans are, they've found another way. That is, crossing by sea. The most dangerous method of escape there is, going directly to South Korea, rather than having to cross through China or Russia. But anyone crossing North Korea by sea will have to deal with the North Korean Navy, mines by the shores, and brutal conditions. The waters surrounding Korea are brutal. Many seasoned fishermen capsize every year, sadly passing away. So imagine what it's like for an inexperienced defector. North Korean escapees normally use very bad wooden boats, and what's more, they normally cross during storms. This may seem more dangerous, and in some ways it is, but during storms, North Korean Navy ships won't be patrolling, giving them a better chance at escaping. Sadly, many people escaping by sea pass away. The people escaping are not professional sailors, and they don't have access to proper boats. To make things even more sad, those who do capsize are normally never found, meaning their family and friends will never find out if they made it to South Korea. Remarkably, some people don't even use a boat. A North Korean man escaped by swimming to South Korea. He was able to do this because he was a fisherman working on a boat. He wore a diving suit under his jacket and hid fins in his boat. He swam for 6 hours in dangerous waters. When he arrived on the South Korean shores, he hid in a drainage ditch and then ran 4 kilometers into South Korean land before he was picked up and held by the South Korean border guards. This, of course, was a unique case of a fisherman allowed to go into the waters and someone who trained at swimming for many years. You may think it's impossible for any normal North Korean to escape, but one North Korean man found the last remaining method. Chul Un-yi was a high-ranking North Korean spy who lived in the South Hwanghae province. By North Korean standards, he had a good life, but he always wished for freedom in South Korea. One day, Lee was surveying the land near the Yellow Sea, doing so as part of his job. While doing this, he studied the electric fences, watchtowers, and landmines, making a mental note of where they were. So Lee went back to his town and attempted to convince one of his friends to escape with him. At first, his friend thought he was insane. His friend was a normal citizen, but after Lee explained his plan, his friend reluctantly agreed. Lee and his friend told no one about their plan to escape, not even their own families. On the day, Lee went to a nearby shop and bought a bike tire and a pump. He also gathered food and put it in his bag. backpack. Lee and his friend waited until 8 p.m. when it got dark, driving until the road ended. They then abandoned their car. The two then had to pass through tall grass, which had mines all over the place. But thankfully, Lee's memory was good, and he was able to remember a safe route. Lee and his friend then arrived at the electric fence. Lee reached out his hand to test it, and thankfully, the fence was off. North Korea don't always power their electric fences, because electricity is expensive and North Korea don't have the money. After passing the mines and the fence, they waited for a cloud to block the moon. When it was completely dark, they went to the shore. Lee had planned to use the pump to inflate the bike tire, and then use it as a raft across. But to Lee's horror, the pump did not work, so they had to make a split-second decision to leave it behind and swim instead, knowing that they likely wouldn't make it. The men had to swim 4 kilometers, but after 2 hours of perilous swimming, the men realized they had to lose some weight, so dumped their clothing and food. But 4 hours into the swim, Lee's friend began to get cramps, and was unable to move his legs, so Lee had to swim with one hand and pull his friend with the other. But that's when the men saw a ship very nearby. They were certain it was a North Korean Navy ship. Desperate to get away, the two men saw a tiny island, so they swam as fast as they could to the island. The men hid on the tiny island and waited for the boat to go away. Thankfully, on the island, there was some wood and styrofoam that had washed up on the shore, so overnight the men built a raft using these materials, and in the morning set off in their raft. But when the men were near the South Korean border, they saw another boat. At first, their hearts sank, until they realized it was a South Korean Navy ship. The South Korean soldiers told the men they'd been tracking them for hours. Lee and his friend were taken on the boat to South Korea, and were questioned to make sure they weren't spies. Today, Chul Un-lee and his friend live happily in South Korea, after using the last remaining method of escape. But sadly, there are still 26 million people in North Korea, unable to leave without risking their freedom and lives. It's safe to say North Korea has basically made it impossible to escape, but people like Chul Un-lee prove it is still possible, if you have luck and lots of bravery. It's so sad to think this is happening now in our lifetimes. So spare a thought for those still stuck in North Korea who haven't yet escaped. If you made it this far, leave a like and subscribe, and watch this video next.